What's going on, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wednesday live stream. Q&A edition, so if you guys got any burning salty questions, feel free to ask away. What's going on, Triggerfish45, Macy's daddy? Just got back from Reefapalooza Orlando, which is pretty awesome. That was my first show in like 3 years, so it's definitely been a while. So it was good to get out and socialize and geek out with other reefers again. So it was definitely a lot of fun. Got to do tons and tons of filming, which was quite amazing. Hey, Saltwater and Lime. Nice to meet you as well last weekend. Evening from the UK. Economical Reefer, welcome. Rap was wonderful. The show was actually good. It was a lot of people. It was a great turnout. The first day was super packed, and then the second day was definitely still pretty busy. I got to go to Worldwide Corals. I got to go to Top Shelf. I popped by Living Reef. I went and checked out ACI, Aquaculture. So super cool. I did tons of filming. So the next few weeks of videos will probably be all stuff from my trip for the most part, and some kind of tours of different coral farms and lots of fun stuff. So pretty excited for that. I still have to finish dive into all my footage for it, but yeah, it was definitely a really fun, tons of good times. So if you guys haven't been to shows, it's definitely worth it, especially if you like to geek out with other people. So Rap was awesome reefing with me. Mark, how you doing? Mahano, hey Devin, you can call me Max. Hi Max. Love the background. Why, thank you. Reef task of the day, painting the back of the 180. Okay, so painting the tank. I have painted a tank before. It is kind of a lot of work. Totally works though. I would say the easier way would probably, if you've played with vinyl before, like vinyl wrapping the back of the tank, I find works very well because it's easy to peel off and it's nice and smooth. I've also tried window tinting it, which is kind of cool, but it gives you a bit of like a mirror reflection on the back, which some fishes can get a little bit funky with. What's going on, Tracy? Utter chaos background? Yes, it is. Sounds like an amazing time. It really, really was. It was a ton of fun. Homegrown fags? What's going on, buddy? Sucks. If I knew you were going, I would have took out a load just go hang out with you. It was very last minute. I freeloaded off a buddy's hotel room, which definitely made it more affordable. Last minute flight, but it was fun. I have no idea yet if there's other shows this year or not, but we'll see. Economical Reefer, best combo of fish food for PO4, only PO4. To add PO4 to your tank, like your deficient PO4, Reefroid supposedly adds a decent amount of PO4, and it's a great coral food, so I would look at that one. Hello from the UK, what's going on, One Arm Reefer? But yeah, for painting a tank, I don't know if I'd paint one again. If you're painting it, good on you. Most tanks look better with a black background. It just makes all your colors pop more. But yeah, I tend to prefer the vinyl route if you can have access to some. And if you want to make it really easy on yourself, measure your tank and go to vinyl or a sign shop and get them to cut it for you. And it's usually like 10 to 20 bucks. You have a perfect piece, so you don't have to trim it. If you just give yourself that little 1/4-inch border around it, it's a good way to go. I added a nice Elvia Port to my tank. That's about the only excitement of the tank beside me. What is your favorite upcoming product that you saw at Rap? Okay, so what did I see that was cool? There was there is a C-Tech glue that was kind of cool. That looked more like a paste. It was thicker, almost like a silicone in a way, but it slowly hardened over at 24 hours or so. That was kind of funky. The big sell of that one too is one. It was like super thick and it didn't really burn your corals, which sometimes super glue can. So that was one consideration. Another cool, what else was new and cool? The people that make the Smart Reef, super window, Reef Factory, they're coming out with a universal tester type of thing where you can load in different reagents based on what you want to test. So that was pretty cool too. What else was fun? There was, for cool products, Geo's Reef came out with a New York calcium reactor design that's super duper quiet. It basically prevents any form of cavitation. And cavitation is when you get air or CO2 sucking through the impeller and it gives you that gurgling water noise. So that was super cool. Then you also had another cool reactor that could work either as a turf scrubber or as a Chater reactor. I thought it was kind of cool how it could be universal. So I did film some clips on both of those, so I'll probably put those out as some future videos. Woody's gamer tag. What's your water change schedule and why? Currently, very sporadic. You cannot see it, but there's actually a big blue bin over behind me. I did probably a 30-gallon water change on the tank beside me not too long ago, and I think there's still 20 or 30 gallons left in the bin, so I'll probably do another one in the near future. I used to do daily automated. I ran out of salt, and I turned it off, and I haven't turned it back on. I did do probably a 40-ish gallon water change about a week ago on my water box, which was the first one in about 4 months, and same with this one, probably about 20, 30 gallon ones. And again, first one in probably 4 or 5 months. What happened to the Solartronic UM box? I'm using it. It is on the sump right beside me. It's on mounted underneath my tank, so it's lighting the chamber below it. I just haven't turned the bottom into like a very lovely display. I've just been throwing my random corals down there. Partially because I've been dealing with like bits of like chrysophytes and other random algae on and off. I think I've almost beat them, but once that's fully like gone and eradicated and I have a bit of free time, then I do want to turn that 2x2 area into like its own kind of mini tank. So it's active, it's being used, it's lighting up my sump every day, it's on beside me. But yeah, I will do a video once I get around to actually making it work harder than a handful of random frags I throw down there. Mr. E. Yagi ordered a toplet after watching your video. Nice. You'll love it, man. They're very, very cool. Like, they're slick. This sounds weird, but I actually like it a lot more than I thought it would. At first, I was like, okay, I have a top. But I'm like, yeah, they're kind of cool. But now that I have one, I'm like, that is a nice top. Like, it's weird, but it's very clean and slick, and like, I don't know, it looks good. It is weird, but yeah, it's like, it looks classy, it looks good. Triggerfish 45. My 180 has 2 overflows, so the bulkheads are at the bottom. Would you be more comfortable with check valves that are 100% submerged within the towers rather than having them in the stand? I mean, the only difference is less water is going to drain down. But the thing you got to consider is that check valves will fail. The problem with them being in the overflow tower is you can't clean them. So ideally you want the double true union check valves so you can take them out and clean them, because otherwise over time you'll get those little like spiroid snails and those little speckles and dots and little crustaceans that go over top of your sumps and stuff, and they're going to form on your valve, and when the power is out eventually they're not going to let it seal. So the water is going to slowly seep down and down and down. So short-term power outage might not be an issue, but if you have, your power's out for a few hours, water is just going to keep trickling down. So you do want the check valve somewhere where you can actually maintain them. And if you're going to do it, buy the double union ones where you can actually clean them properly. Haley, are spaghetti worms bad? I have lots of my sand. They are great cleanup crew. They're harmless. They're just little cleanup crew creatures. If you have tons and tons in your sand, it probably just means you're feeding a lot. That's my take on them, but I've never worried about them. They're kind of funky. Brandon Scott Art. What's up, ReefDudes? What's up, Brandon Scott Art? Had to miss Reefapalooza. Oh no, hour and a half away from my house because of COVID. Dang COVID. Well, hopefully you're feeling better now, man. Cool. Cheers. Looking at new lights. Have been tempted by the Solartronic. It's a pretty funky design with how it works. But yes, I will definitely have to do an updated one. I still see it's like 90% beat, but there's still a bit of chrysophytes in there that have been taunting me that I got to deal with. Mark, should I trust 2 Versa pumps for automatic water change without any other redundants? Make sure you just check it periodically. So I have had 2 doing automatic water changes for quite a while. I'll probably re-enable them soon. And yeah, just as long as they're calibrated the same, it's going to work out. And when I was doing it, I was doing about 1.5 gallons a day. And yeah, it worked out well. James, what's been your favorite carbon source product through the reefing journey? It is Orca Labs something. What's the product called? They had a really cool one. So Orca Labs. I don't remember the name of the actual product though. But they had a nitrate reducer by NitroGuard, that's what it's called. I liked it because it was a very slow, passive way of doing it. So these little cubes you put in your sump, and you put an air bubble on top of it. So I bought a disc one, put a little dinky air pump into it, and it just created little micro bubbles coming up. And the aeration made it break down a little bit more, and basically help feed the bacteria. So it was a very slow, gentle way of carbon dosing. And it took about 2 months. I believe I used 2 containers over 2 or 3 months. And it brought my NO3 down from around 50 or 60 down to like 8 or 9. So it wasn't super cheap, but it wasn't terrible. But the thing is, I did two containers of it. And since then, I've never had to use it again. Like, it's just stayed down. And my nitrates are chronically high before that. So I would say that was a really cool one I used. Carl Ray, starting to get vermilion snails. Any suggestions how to get rid of them? Good old bumblebee snails is probably your best bet. I have, in a stream I did with Mike Paletta a long time ago, he dosed coral snow, which is kind of a chalk powder, like calcium powder, to the tank. And supposedly they'll pull that in and it'll choke them out a bit. And that could also work. I haven't tried it, but he did it, and I talked to another reefer that did it. So I got 2 people tell me that worked for them. Mr. E. Yegi, thinking of starting YouTube on my reef. Any tips, things to keep in mind? All my videos, I try to make them entertaining and helpful. Other big thing is just stay consistency. Like, I, try and force myself to have my weekly videos, and, as long as work's not in the way, I try and do my weekly live streams. But consistency is key if you're trying to actually build it up. Fairly odd. Only 9 likes. Let's get it up. That's right, guys. If you're enjoying all my efforts of random live streams and videos, hit the like button. Keep the YouTube gods happy. I figured I'd put them in towers so I could keep plumbing the higher within the stand. I have a ball valve underneath. I can close and remove the returns. Okay, yeah, so we're talking about the check valves if you're putting them in your return tower. So the benefit of that is if they do leak, less is going to go into your sump. So, I mean, could be a strategy right there. But just keep in mind, you need to maintain them. So either way, get the ones you can unscrew and clean them. But yes, there would be less potential to drain if they are in your overflow towers. That being said, your overflow tower shouldn't really go lower than your teeth or your return nozzle, right? Because whatever the lowest point is was going to back drain. Dedicated Reefer, thank you for the 4.99 super chat. Appreciate it, buddy. Good game to you too. What else is new and exciting? I acquired some lovely super long, well, I think they're 24-inch level sensors. So one of my next soon projects is going to be to put them into the mixing bins. I do have optical top and bottom now, but it'll be cool to know the actual height of it. And one thing that I realized, because I was always like, okay, they're fun to have, but again, you could trigger things on and off with opticals. But when I was out of town at RAP, I'm like, okay, I can tell where things are at based on the water level. So I'm like, okay, is my ATO on or off based off the water level in the sump? Am I dosing too much based off the water level? So there's a lot more data you can get, which is handy. I like my data. Did you say consistency for making YouTube videos is key? If you are trying to grow a channel, consistency is definitely key. Like, I do a video a week, and I think that's one of the biggest things is just keeping up the consistency. Sammy 31D, what intensity do you run your radions? Got mine at 63%, feels kind of high over my mixed reef. On the water box, I believe they are around 45% for the 30s, and the 15s beside me are a bit lower, but I will check for you. Alright, so radion schedule. So they are 48% for my higher period of the day and 42% for the lower period of the day. Now keep in mind, these are XR30s and I have 5 of them. It is a ridiculous amount of light. So if you have less lights, you can run them a bit higher. Because I have a bunch, I keep them pretty dang low. Now on the lagoon tank beside me with XR15s, I believe they're only 20 something, but let me double check. Radions. Once I find my schedule, they are running at 40% the XR15s. And I have 4 of them and then 2 blades. And I believe the blades are around 50%. Hello, Aqua Garden Zen. Dedicated Reefer, you're welcome. Learned so much and love the content. Thank you. Appreciate it. Makes me happy to hear that it helps. So that's good. How are the blades doing? The blades are doing wonderful. They're silent. They're quiet, they have a nice color, no complaints, the blades are great. Those zoanthids behind you are magnificent. They're really cool, they're one of my favorites. Those are utter chaos, super duper cool one. It's just like a minute clip or so that I have looping on there. But yeah, they're super cool, super pretty. One of my faves. They have big heads. They're super bright. They're really cool ones. JCS Reefing. Missed you walking around Reefapalooza, but what was one thing that stood out? Oh, I already answered that one, but what else was cool? I'm trying to think what else was like new funky things. Okay, question for you, JCS. What was the coolest thing that stood out to you? And we can revisit mine, but I'm curious what was your standout. YouTube advice is my area of expertise. Have a plan for what you're doing. Each video has a plot, start, middle, end. I used to plan mine out a lot more, and now I don't. I have a general idea, and then I just do it. But yes, they definitely appreciate frequency. Like if I did multiple videos a week, YouTube would be way happier, but I just don't have time to do multiples, so one it is. Good audio is also very important. People listen more than they watch it, so you definitely want good audio. Finally, a good thumbnail is more important. This is also true. Very, very good tips. I could definitely improve on mine. Sometimes it's super last minute, but Dare Donkey, ask away, buddy. Are you going to Wrap New York? I don't know. Probably not. I think I'm out of town. Is that next month? I think that one's too close for me. Next month I have to go out of town for a week, and I'm pretty sure it conflicts. But the alkalinity tester, very much like Alkatronic, but cannot for the life remember the brand. Oh, you're probably talking about the Reef Keeper Plus, which is, I have that one. It's gonna zoom in. So I'm assuming, you're meaning that one. If it focuses, that's like Cage Keeper Plus, and they were at the very back of the show, closer to the raffle tables, and yeah, they had some cool products. How long would you seed a new aquascape with established reef rock before introducing it into a display? I mean, longer the better. You could always just put that established rock in your sump too, right? Or if you're doing a new tank and you already have an established tank, put a bunch of your new rock into the sump of your old tank and just let it pre-seed. As long as you have no pests, great way to do it. Yeah, June 23rd. I will be way up north in the boonies of the Northwest Territories at a mine for work for a week. So I will definitely be missing that one. JCS Reefing, any thoughts? I think it's a pretty cool tester. It is very, very quiet, which I definitely appreciate. It has little status lights, so it can change color based on the status, so you know if it's testing, if it's in range or out of range. And it has its own app, tracks it all, so overall I'd say it's a pretty cool device. I still have to dig into it more, but I actually do have the doser too, that I still have to play with the automated dosing with it. That will be in the near future, now that I'm back at home. But it is a similar idea to the Alkatronic. The only thing I do wish is there is a way to take that data out and use it in an aquarium controller. So it'd be cool, like with the Alkatronic, you can use the BNC port to pipe your reading into, you know, your hydros, your Apex, your GHL. But it'd be cool if I had that. It's the only thing I feel that I'm missing from it. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty sweet tester. Woody's gamer tag. I'm struggling to pick a UV light for a 150-gallon tank. Can you tell me what you buy? I would buy, I'll show you which one I buy. The Aqua UV, I believe it's 57 or 50 watts, something like that. I'll find it for you. It's the one I picked, and it was because it was the highest output for its size. And I believe it's like 50 or 57 watts or something like that. I'm just trying to find it. 50 Aqua Violet 57 watt classic UV sterilizer. I went with that because it's very short. Like there's 40 watts that are longer, and UVs can be big, so it's nice to have one that's fairly compact. I was almost debating picking up a second one for the tank beside me eventually, but what's going on, CJ? Good to see you, buddy. Any new tank plans anytime soon? Nothing soon. I have two really, really big tanks right now. They're both like 150 to 200 range, and I'm at my limit for now. I just don't have space for another tank, but eventually maybe. I have a vivarium, if that counts as a tank, with dart frogs. That's about it. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe one day. Maybe we'll do a nano, or who knows. But yeah, at the current moment in time, I don't have any space. Pjort, what's going on, buddy? Reefs, what's going on, Richard? Good to see you. So, who else was at Reefapalooza? I'm curious, did you guys see anything that stood out to you as like really cool or really awesome new products or anything really fun? I oddly did not take a ton of look at corals because I was leaving Monday night and not Sunday, so I couldn't really bring anything back. Richard, always great seeing you, buddy. Always good. It was too short though. It's the only problem. Like I feel like the weekend went by like fast. So Inside Out 518, moving to a new place in about a month. Anything to keep in mind when moving? Everything. I'll be putting the rock in with coral in a bucket, fish in a separate bucket. It's only a water box warning kib. That should work out fairly well. Just make sure the coral's not rolling around and breaking each other, obviously. Fish in the second bucket, definitely wise. Yeah, I would just have them all drain your water out, put your fish, your coral in, transport them, get them set back up. If it's a longer drive, putting a battery air bubbler inside of the container probably isn't going to hurt. But yeah, otherwise you should be pretty good. Moving a tank's a pain, but 20 gallons isn't bad at all. I promised my husband no more tanks, but not my head. Already planning to put one more. Yeah, the tanks are addicting. I don't know. We'll see. If I do this house run, I'll move my office one day. Maybe I'll sneak in another one. But current state, I got nowhere to put it. Yes, that's a good point. Dear Donkey, remember to replace with new sand. I would agree on that one. New sand can definitely be a big one. If you clean your sand really well, you can reuse it. But usually the sand is where a lot of junk's going to build up inside of it. Where with a new one, you don't really have that worry. And if you are cleaning really well, you're killing all the bacteria, but it's a lot of work. So food for thought. New sand's easier, especially in 20 gallon. One bag, you're done. I need some B-rolls from you from Mexico places. All right, Richard. I'll trade you some footage later, buddy. We got some edit up a storm going on here. Pjort, what do you set your ozone at? How long did it take for your ORP to get up when you first installed it? I have the Ozotech Poseidon 200. It is set at somewhere between 2 and 3, and I run it for 1 a.m. to 5 or 6 a.m. So I run it 4 to 6 hours a night, 4 or 5 hours, and it climbs up pretty well. I think my ORP's actually been higher the last little while, so it hasn't even kicked in a bit, and that has worked very well for me. Let's see. Now I did turn my UV back on after chatting with Chris that day, so my ORP between the two is at 410 right now, so it's been staying pretty high all on its own. The pH has also got magical. It's at 4.1 right now, 8.41, which is super high for me. So all these magic mad scientist things it's working pretty well. It's starting to pay off. Hope your little frag is healthy as well. He is. He was crawling all over me, climbing Mount Dad before the stream, so he's definitely doing good. Oh, completely unrelated, but the wife's painting like this big crazy underwater mural in his room, which is super cool. So I'll have to show that off when it's done, but it's looking pretty sweet so far. So he's pretty much obligated to fish now because I do the videos. He loves staring at my tanks. He's gonna have a massive wall of underwater in his room, so tiny future reefer in the making. Tigerfish 45. Any thoughts on Bubble Magnus Curve Elite 9 versus Simplicity? I have not used either, but Bubble Magnus is very popular, and they do work quite well. Actually, I lied. I think I did use a Bubble Magnus way back when. I mean, they definitely work well. They're fairly tried and true. Simplicity 320 DC. I've never used a Simplicity skimmer though. I'm just googling that one right now. Yep, never used Simplicity, so I cannot comment on it. Honestly, either one's probably going to work well, but I can't really say which is better on that one. Brian, what are the dimensions of your shallow reef with the blue throat trigger? Looking at getting one. So my blue throat is in. Apparently my camera just disappeared on me. Let's try. Bring back Devin's video. Alright, camera off and on. So my triggerfish is in my water box, and the water box is a 6-foot tank, which is 72 by 25 by 24. And so that one's been pretty good. And the shallow reef beside me that you cannot see, but that one is 7 feet by 7'6" by 28 by 14. Let's go back to old school web camera. There you go. Apparently my old school Sony is starting to bite the dust. Any thoughts on bubble magnets? Okay, answer that one. Installed the same ozone you have, been running it on my 2 for 2 weeks, 3 hours a night. AF 250 gallon ORP is still 250. Am I doing something wrong or does it take a while? It can take a bit. The other consideration is, one, don't necessarily worry about what the number is. Do you have crystal clear water? That's the first thing, right? If you have crystal clear water, then it's probably working well and doing its job. So worry about that more than worrying about... Oh, looks like my good camera's still buggered. Let's turn it off and on. I put a Jabo DC in my Curve 5. It works way better than most skimmers. I have thought about actually changing the pump in some of them. So, nice to know you did it. Definitely thought about that one. Invisible, I know, right? My fancy camera, I think it's getting too hot or something. It's getting toasty. Toasty. This is the old school Logitech web camera right now. It's my backup camera. Turn it off for a sec. Turn it back on. See if it works. The one day I was laughing when O's camera went dark on him. I was like, oh, that's probably what happened. I think it overheated. That's the downfall of Sony mirrors if you have it on high res. All right, we're going on the old school web camera today. At least we got a fancy background. So yeah, so ozone, I never worry about the number. As long as it's crystal clear, like your water's clear, then you're at the right amount. You're better to run less than too much. And that goes a long way. Like ozone can be harsh on things and you definitely don't want to overdo it. So always 100% less is more. Once you find that magical amount where you got crystal clear water, you know you're in a good place. I put a Jabo DC in my Curve 5, works better most. What did I used to use? I used to use a coral box skimmer. That was like a big one. What else is fun for new updates in the world? The other fun one, which I'll show you guys soon, I did playing with Home Assistant and integrating it with multiple tanks now. So I can see both tanks within there, which is pretty cool. And I can trigger stuff off of it. So I will do a video on this one in the near future, but I picked up a Zigbee based RGB controller. And I made it so if my tank's an alarm, it'll start flashing the lights on it. So I do have like LED lights behind my monitor and behind my desk for accent lights. So my next little mini project, I'm going to set that up so if my tank's in alarm mode for whatever reason, then it'll start like strobing and flashing behind my computer. I think that's going to be pretty cool. So that's my next little mini project. So I got that. Picked up some of the big 2-foot water sensors at Wrap. So gonna step up the mixing station a bit and make her a little bit fancy. You're most welcome, Pjort. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. Appreciated. Tracy, $10 toward this new camera fund. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Put a little fan on her or something. It's kind of ghetto, but she's working for now. I know I need a new camera. Hey, I bought this one for like $100 off Facebook ads ages ago, or $150. It's treated me pretty well the last few years, so can't complain. But yes, definitely think so. Or a cooling fan, one of the two. The problem's the summertime. Alright guys, what else you got for questions today? I'm still slightly sleep deprived of being up very late and up very early for Reefapalooza. That basically sums up every single day of socializing. One other really solid plus is I have roped in a whole slew of people for future live streams while I was at the show. So I have lots of like pretty awesome guests going to be coming on over the next few months. Reef Exotic by Lewis. Big fan, love the content. Starting a new channel. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Any tips for a newbie? As I actually answered this one earlier, but biggest thing is just be consistent. you know, my goal is always like make my videos somewhat entertaining and make them helpful, right? And yeah, just be consistent with it. And that's the big thing. Any nano all-in-one tank must-haves, 20 gallons. Nanos are super duper easy, to be honest. My Red Sea 20 gallon nano, super duper easy tank. It was probably one of my easiest tanks. I had to do nothing special for it. I gave it a water change every like week or two. That was it. Super duper easy. Have you ever tried the Sea Lab number 28 bio blocks? I have not, but I will Google them to see what they look like. I have used many other bio blocks, and is there a big difference? I don't know. At the end of the day, it's surface area for bacteria. The big difference is the porosity. If it's super porous, super tiny pores, you know, that's a ton of bacteria surface area, but then you kind of wonder a little bit, is it going to get plugged up with bacteria over time, or is it going to stay working? And that's always a bit of a question, so it kind of depends on the flow through it and everything else. So, haven't used those specifically, but Brandon Scott Art. What brand of trace is everyone using? So, special blend. I have the Brightwell stuff as like my bulk one, and then I'm doing the Reef Moonshiners as like my tweaking stuff. So I have the broad spectrum, and then I do a handful of bottles that I add manually myself like once a week-ish. I am going to do the method where I mix up, you know, maybe a month's worth and with some RODI water and put on the doser. So all my trace elements that are like my individual ones will get dosed in bulk on a regular basis without me having to think about it. Ollie, have you ever had to treat flukes in a display tank? I have not, but I'm pretty sure flukes is the freshwater dip one I fixed it if I recall. NSB Reefs, how does the TG6 compare to an iPhone 4 for a point-and-shoot camera? Fantastically better for the sole fact of you can set the white balance on the TG cameras. And you can color correct it to cancel out most of the blues. And they do a fantastic job. I don't have the 6, I have the 4, but it's like, the thing does great. Awesome. Like the thumbnail I shot, the photo a couple days ago with that camera. So it's a good all-arounder. The Sea Lab blocks are an all-in-one supplement. Oh, interesting. So it's like a dosing block? I will have to read up on those a bit more. But that's kind of funky. If you use it, let me know how that goes. Kind of curious. Saltwater and lime. Struggling to keep my nitrates down in a somewhat new tank. Running a reef mat, skimmer, feeding only frozen mysis. Phosphate staying around 0.02. Nitrates won't go under 40. Okay, prime example. The one I talked about earlier, the NitroGuard by NitroGuard? Yeah, NitroGuard. Try that. That stuff was magical. It was like very slow for a month or two. It brought my nitrates right down to like this like magic happy level, and they stayed low. They never went back up again. So very, very happy with how that worked out. Have I used a sulfur denitrator? I have friends that have, but I have not personally used one. They're interesting. Basically, you run your tank water at a very slow rate through it, and it will suck out your nitrates. They take a month or two to kick in, and then once they do, they're supposed to be magical for lowering nitrates. But yeah, definitely have not personally tried it, but I think they are interesting. The weird thing is I found it harder to actually find places that have the nitrate stuff to put inside of it. Darken that a bit, looks weird. So yeah. There you go. Fixing my ghetto web camera. What camera is it? Mine's the TG4, and I've had this guy for ages, but it works really well. What are the benefits of elevated magnesium around 1500? What's your magnesium level? I tend to keep my magnesium at around 1250 to 1350, 1400-ish. I don't know if there's any benefits of it being 1500. I know there's potential to impact, inverts and certain things if it's too high. Patrick, how do you get your torch to color up? As with most corals, if you feed them, they tend to get a bit better color and they tend to be happier. Again, you also need nutrients in your tank. I keep my phosphate 0.03 to 0.09. Nitrates, 5 to 20 range, and things seem pretty dang happy. Like acro's like a little bit lower, but if you have them high, there's tons of, they'll get great color. Lathario Bowie. Sorry for the rookie question, but does brown coral mean too much nutrients or too low nutrients? If you have crazy high nutrients, in theory, it could brown out a coral. But there's also correlation to the light. So if you have not enough light, it could potentially be a brown coral. So there's a bunch of different levels. If it's all stressed and not happy, it could be a brown coral. So it's not necessarily just one thing. There's multiple things that could cause it. Now, generally, if you have higher lighting, the higher and more intense your lights are, the more nutrients your tank can deal with. And it's kind of a sliding scale. Versa will keep its settings. Yes, it will. Okay, Reef Exotico by Lewis. Thanks for the 999 super chat, man. Appreciate it. Going to start. Calc with a Milwaukee pH controller. Does the Versa lose programming and power it off? It does not. It definitely keeps it. I shut mine on off all the time. My calc, if my elk is or my pH is too high, my Versa will shut off. So it stops dosing, turns back on, remembers all the settings. So you're good. You could definitely hook it up to a controller. One-Iron Reefer. How do you like your Peninsula tank compared to a standard style tank? If you have the space for a Peninsula, I think they're a really cool way to go. If you have a standard tank, you have one side of a tank, right? If you have a Peninsula tank, it's like you have two tanks in one. So you got this end, this end. You get two long sides instead of one long side. So it is slightly trickier to aquascape because you can't just have the wall. In that case, if I had the option, I would do a wider Peninsula. Like, I would love if my tank was like, say, 30 inches instead of 25 inches. Like, the more width, I think would be cool. But Peninsula, then you have two tanks in one. You can see it from more angles, and you could escape them different corals on different sides, or I don't know, you can mix it up. It's a lot of fun. So personally, I would always say Peninsula. Now, ironically, like even my office tank, it's in normal tank configuration, but it's Peninsula. So if I ever change my office, I can just pull that baby out and I'll have both sides of it. Alright, Arthur Reef had a weird thing with the Versa. I was doing electrical work, power off, the Versa was dosing off, only one head. Yeah, I'm not too sure. There's no way that baby's dosing without power. Patrick, my tank is weird. I can only cover up SPS, but I'm losing my gold torch. Now, if you're losing gold torch, that could also potentially be bacteria infection or something else affecting it, right? So torches are finicky. Like, they're super finicky corals, and a lot of the time there is some form of bacterial or something that is affecting it, making it unhappy. Jokin just picked up 4 XR15 Pros, 2 were upgraded to Gen 6 Blues. Should I swap out back and run 2 Pros and 2 Blues in the middle? Pros outside. I alternated them. At one point I had like a Pro Blue, Pro Blue, Pro, and it was actually pretty cool. They blend pretty nicely and it works. So your call if you want to change or not, but I would try it as you have it for now and then make up your decision later if you want to mix it up and change it back. Chili Popper, thoughts on algae reactors? Do you have a favorite one and why? For algae reactors, aka the light inside with Chaeto, my buddy used the Pax Bellum one. It seemed to work pretty well. I've used DIY ones. Go to the turf scrubber side, the Clearwater scrubbers worked very well for me. I'm not running at the moment because I don't really have high nutrients on the tank beside me, but if they do start to go up, I'll put that one back on the tank. So it definitely worked pretty well for sucking out nutrients. Geel's Reef has a new cool one, which can be kind of like a waterfall scrubber or an algae reactor based on how you plumb it, which I thought was kind of cool because it's kind of universal. Arthur Reef, the best thing for polyp extension? Probably amino acids and just feeding the tank. Now, if your corals are happy and there's food in the water, the odds are you'll get polyp extension and things will be happy. Now, the consideration is if you have a fish that's annoying the corals and picking at it, that will definitely kill your polyp extension. So usually if corals don't have polyp extension, it's usually because something's annoying it. So that could be a fish, it could be, like red bugs or some other little creatures, flatworms. Usually something is annoying the coral, and that's why the polyps are hiding inside, or a fish is randomly picking at it. What-armed reef of cheers? I think I can go for the peninsula. Good choice, good choice. Peninsulas are always sexy. It's a good choice. Red Devil. Is it possible to run Reef Keeper or similar cage controller on a nano tank and dump back the waste into the tank? Yes, you absolutely can. My Alcatronics both dump the waste back into my tank. I didn't do it for the first like 2 or 3 years because I was worried about it, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to put this in. Eventually got over it, and after other people doing it for years, and I finally do it. Now both of them dump back into the tank. So now it's nice and happy, it works, and things are good. And I have one giant aptage in my sump I can see. Things crazy long. Of course, I don't have any needies. But yeah, so that one's safe. I don't know about other brands. I'm assuming most of the ones that use an acid will be similar. Now, if you test a lot, it's possible that the acid would have a slight depression on pH or ELK in your tank, because it is an acid, so it is going to lower it. So that is a consideration. But if you're only testing once, twice a day, it's probably a negligible issue. And Jordan also started using Chaeto and Refugium light opposite timing of my main lights. Good choice. But pH drops overnight. Not enough Chaeto to give it time. Increase light intensity. Definitely you can increase your light intensity. That will help. As the Chaeto photosynthesize, it will help boost your pH up a bit. Now that being said, you are going to have somewhat of a drop at night. It's hard to avoid it unless you're like dosing ELK at night and other stuff at night. Saving up for Red Sea Max Nano. Any tips to get started? That was a cool little tank. I liked mine. It was a pretty easy tank. Honestly, I did a water change every week or two, and that was about it. I had very minor dosing on there. Super easy tank. Clearwater Scrubbers in the house. What's going on? Good to see you, Josh. It was great hanging out, man. Okay, good reason to go to shows. It is awesome to be able to geek out with other reefers in person. Let me know when you're coming back down to the States. I will. I don't know when yet. We'll see. Maybe later in the year. Probably be a few months, so. But yeah, that was fun. So we went out to Chris's ACI's, Chris Meckley's, who was on my stream last week, and did a bit of a tour of the place, and yeah, super cool. So many rabbit holes. Love it. Red Devil was running Alpha Reef on a nano tank before the corals were happy. After all the reef corals looked pissed, stopped using it, and the corals bounced back. Why? Alpha Reef. I've never personally used Alpha Reef, so I do not know exactly. Now, one possible guess is Alpha Reef has like a bit of a time. It's calcium formate, and it doesn't necessarily like show up as a reading right away. There's a bit of like a delay before it kicks in. So it's possible if you weren't using a dose, you're just dumping it in, it may have caused swings by that little time delay, then you have more of a swing. I don't know if that's correct. This is just a random possible theory, but may or may not be related. Saltwater and Lime. Best part of Reefapalooza for me was getting to meet people and hanging out with fellow reefers. 100% agree with you. I love the social aspect of it. Yeah, it's awesome to geek out and just chat reefing for endless hours over some drinks and just hang with the reefers. Tons of fun. Came home with 3 new frags and new fish too. Very nice. Ironically, the only thing I actually bought was an algae scraper. It's not in the office right now, but Julian's 2 little fishies has like this really long stainless steel one, or super funky, and I always buy it just for cleaning the very bottom by the sand bed. So I brought that baby home, and it works very well. I used it last night. But yeah, social aspect, hands down, one of the best parts of going to shows. Alright guys, what else you got for questions? Here, let's see if the camera will work yet. I'm gonna try flipping back to the other one. Hey, it's working now. Better camera kicked in. So, Saltwater and Lime, question for you. Did you see any cool new gear at the show or anything that you thought was really awesome? I'm curious to know. I'm trying to think what else is super cool. Not directly the show, but another part I thought was awesome was just visiting all the different coral farms. Like, it's really cool to see what everyone has set up, how they're running their tanks, what are they using for like flow and lighting and all the awesome coral. And yeah, that part's really cool. If you do have a chance to go to any of these places like Living Reef, Top Shelf, Worldwide, ACI, checking out the coral farms of people that grow it on scale is pretty awesome. Like, super duper cool. And I will have videos of pretty much all of these, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's so cool to see what they do and what's working for them. And these are people that make it for a living, right? It's their livelihood, so they obviously have to be good at it in order to keep that rocking. When do you say we're doing a live? I already forgot. I have no idea yet, Josh, but we'll figure it out. We'll rock one sometime in the next month or so. Jordan, just started using my protein skimmer. Any tips on how do I know if it's working properly besides the bubbles wet dry? So, as a general rule of thumb, on most skimmers, if this is, so the cup, say this is the cup and that's the neck, I always put the bubbles to right in the base of the neck. So you're looking to the side, you kind of want your bubble tower to be right around there, and then the bubbles have to work to get into the cup. And I personally go for more of a thicker, dry skim, so it's going to be like really dark green nastiness. If you're looking at it and it looks like tea and it's very light, that's what I'd consider a wet skim. But I shoot for the drier skim and super duper dark. That's how I personally do it. And usually, yeah, just getting the bubbles to like the base of the neck, just below where the cup is, right around that point, usually works out pretty well. Arthur, how often do you calibrate your Versa? Do you see any big deviation? Also, is there a way to calibrate the Versa where the volume doesn't affect the daily amount? Okay. Sorry, my throat's super dry right now. So with the Versa, if you are dosing trace elements, calibrate to, not 5 or 10 mils. If you're doing a water change, calibrate to like a gallon or a couple liters. You want to calibrate it within the range that you're actually using it. So that's one of the biggest things. So that it is accurate for that range. If you calibrate it to like 10 mils and you're asking to do 10 gallons, there's going to be a bit of deviation, right? So just make sure it is roughly in the ballpark that you are actually asking it to do on a daily basis. Now, as for how often to calibrate it, the only ones I really calibrate slightly more frequently, like the auto water change ones, I probably do those every couple months. The calcium reactor one, I never bother calibrating anymore. Even the dosing ones, I don't overly bother because I'm only dosing, a few mil of trace elements, so nothing's really going out of whack. But if you're dosing, a gallon or two a day, there's more deviation that could happen over time. The calcium reactor, that one I don't even bother anymore. Same with the calc, because if it's dosing a little more, a little less, I don't really care. It's just that consistency. So like the calcium reactor is a drip, right? Is my elk going down? Okay, turn it up and dose a bit more. So at the end of the day, if it's 60 liters or 70 liters, I don't really care. If I need more elk, dose a bit more. I need less elk, dose a bit less. Same with the calc. For the calc, I am dosing my calc based on my evaporation. So I have one of these guys in my sump, which is the little Neptune level sensors, and is my water level stable? If it's trending upwards, dose a bit less calc. If it's tanking, dose some more calc. So it's super duper easy. So I don't overly worry about calibrating it, except for the auto water change, because I just need them to be the same, right? So every few months I'll maybe recalibrate it just for good measure. Otherwise, there might be like a slight deviation, which might slowly up or lower your salinity over time, and that's the main reason to calibrate it. Are you dosing manganese for gonies via moonshine? Good question. I am currently dosing chromium, iron, cobalt, and manganese. Yes, I am. So I am giving it about 5 mils a weekish, I believe, to the water box out of the moonshiner. And gonies are super duper happy. They have been in my tank for ages. I can't say I've done anything special, but they're thriving in there, so maybe manganese is one of the secrets. Hey, brother from India, what's going on? Welcome. What's going on, Niagara Fire Corals? What are your thoughts on mud, like Aquaforce or Life Source or Miracle Mud? I have a bag of each of them in the sump of my water box. My mind, whether or not this is 100% accurate, make your own judgment, but in my mind, they add a bit of bacterial biodiversity to the tank, and they also do provide some trace elements. Now, how much they do, I don't know how I'd quantify that, but I see it as kind of like a bit of a trace element, like kind of backup battery, so if your tank needs stuff, it can leach some of it out of there. Now, I have no idea how accurate or scientific or any of this is, but that's my current thought on it. It's hard to say how much of benefit it adds, but I do think there is some benefit. And now, I did add a bag of each in the past, and I did the aquabiome testing, and I had pretty darn good biodiversity. Now, was it from adding those products? Maybe. It's hard to say. That being said, I do have another aquabiome test that I plan on sending in soon, and I haven't added any since then, and that was a good year ago. So it'll be interesting to see if the tank is, similar. Is it more diverse, less diverse now? I don't know. It'll be interesting. So that's going to happen in the near future. Thank you for reminding me to actually get on doing that test soon. Ethan, I'd like to start Ghani, LV, Bernardipora, and Stylo Garden. Any tips? Her Ghani is like Phyto, Manganese. Also, what is your thoughts on high mag? I keep mine 1500, corals love it. Okay, so I have lots of Ghanies in my tank. My mag is currently 1397, so 1400-ish. And my Ghanies are growing very well in there. Let me find a photo of them. We are... Yeah, so I have that focuses. Maybe. Yeah, it doesn't want to focus. But yeah, I have a ton of Ghanies in my tank. They all seem to thrive. Actually, in both my tanks, they thrive. And I don't really do anything specific for it. So I don't think there's any like super secret magic there. But they seem happy with just like the general dosing. Do you dose strontium? Mine tanked every time I ICP test. I dose it when I ICP test and it tells me I'm low. Then I will dose it over a few days to correct it. But I don't dose it on a normal daily. I want to share my tank video, which sub Sunday. Give me some opinions. I'll take a look later for you there, buddy. Yeah, I'm probably due for an ICP test as well. I've had a few conversations with people over the weekend, like thoughts on ICP testing. Do you need to do it? How often do you need to do it? All that jazz. I do them probably 3-ish times a year. Every like 3-4 months I'll do one. And mainly just to make sure that my dosing of trace elements is either semi on track. If it's completely out of whack, like I'm deficient something, or if I'm dosing too much of something, that's the main thing I want to know. Is for the stuff that I don't necessarily test for. If you do regular weekly water changes and you're not dosing trace elements, I don't know if there's a huge value in doing it. At that point, I'm like, you just spend that $50 on a bucket of salt and do a big water change and probably correct most of your stuff. That's kind of how I feel on some of it. Like, why spend $50 on a test when you can spend $50 on a massive water change and reset most of your trace elements? So that's one thought, especially on a smaller system. Now, if you have a big tank and you never do water changes, then I think ICP test has a lot more value. So it's like, do you want to spend your money on salt or do you want to send it on an ICP test? Like, that's one consideration. And the other consideration is, are you dosing stuff you're not testing for? And if you are, then that's another part of having a value of the doing an ICP. So I'm going to probably do one in the next month or two because I feel like I'm way overdue. Niagara Fire Corals, hop back on the ozone train. Welcome back. That's a good call, sir. I might pick up an ozone for my office tank as well, so they can both be on the ozone train. Say hello to crystal clear water. Okay, ozone. Since a couple of people have mentioned ozone today. When you're doing ozone, again, less is more. Do not overdo it. Too much ozone can be trouble. Just enough ozone is magical. So you want to find that just enough to give you that crystal clear water. Now, I mean, if you have a smaller tank, I mean, a bag of carbon is probably way cheaper for you and less issues, risk, yada, yada, yada. But ozone kind of gives you a lot of the similar clarity and breaks down toxins where, you know, carbon will absorb it. So it's kind of a trade-off, but they both definitely work quite well. But I haven't used carbon in ages now. Like, I almost wonder if I should use it just for good measure once in a while, because it's probably been 6 months. But the ozone magically takes care of most things for me. Lincoln Towers. Have you heard of dosing Tropic Marin K Plus on its own? I was low on a bunch of things, and it's the only thing I've been dosing. I have heard of similar things. Now, I have not used it myself, though, so I can't fully comment on that one. Just Googling it. Essential Catonic Trace Element Supplement Liquid Form. Contains trace elements in their pure mineral form. It sounds just like a trace element blend, so I mean, I'm sure it's going to do the job. Trace elements are one of those things where they don't necessarily have to be perfect, but they need to be available. If you are missing something, then you could potentially be stunting growth or color or something. But on the flip side, if you have too much of one of them, then you risk, you know, a certain color or a certain thing could actually take over. And so it's kind of interesting. So you want it to be available, but you also don't want to overdose. Now, I saw a post earlier today I was responding to someone about where they're like, I can't grow Cato for the life of me. Now, the odds are, I bet you any money he's either out of iron or molybdenum, because that will stunt the growth of Chaeto. And that's something, most people will have a refugium, and it will be like thriving. It'll grow like crazy for a couple months, but then their growth will just stunt. It'll stop growing. And it's usually because of the iron or molybdenum. One of those trace elements are lacking. That's something that it kind of requires to grow. All right, Arthur, back to the Versa questions. Sorry for asking a few times, but when I calibrate my Versa, volume is added to the daily dose. Is there a way to prevent this? I have no idea what you mean. Volume is added to the daily dose. Oh, just for how much it spun in a day? I have no idea. I mean, wait 24 hours and then it'll go away because it's no longer in the daily dose. I don't know if there's any other way. I haven't paid attention to that one. I would have told you to go mangoes or mangroves. Devin, when you're using Flatworm Stop and Coral Booster, were you doing a full dose or half? I've been doing half dose for about 3 weeks now, and I think it's bumping it up. I only ever did a half dose. Again, I wasn't actually doing it for flatworms. I was doing it to try and get, you know, more growth and more basting and all that jazz. And basically it helps the corals get a thicker, I don't know if it's thicker flesh or thicker slime coat. You know, the theory is it's less palatable to flatworms, but it also, I think that extra bit of flesh and stuff makes it a bit more hardier, makes it a bit happier. So I only ever did a half dose. Main reason for that is I have one buddy who sells super high-end coral, and he grows it, and he's like, this stuff absolutely works, but it's like crack to the corals, and they're like, they'll love it, but if you stop, you know, they're going to be really angry, and they're going to not be as happy and lose coloration. And that scared me a bit, so I only ever did a half dose after hearing that. Now, I don't do it anymore. I ran out a while ago, and I've never refilled it, which I might. But I did a few big bottles. The stuff's not cheap, though. That's the problem. But I do feel that it helped. So, but it's also, again, one of those things that's harder to quantify. Arthur Reef, thank you for the $5 super chat, buddy. Appreciated. Does All for Reefs dose everything? I don't think so. I don't think it does trace elements. I think it's just like your big three. Again, haven't used it. If I do a nano tank again, I will try All for Reef because I think it's super cool to dose one thing instead of three things. Hi from Australia. Never been able to make it live. Welcome, Helen. Welcome. Question: with ozone, do you need an ozone rated skimmer? It is wise to have an ozone rated skimmer because if not, it will slowly over time break down your skimmer. So there's two types of acrylic. There is cast acrylic and the other one is extruded. I believe it's cast and extruded. I don't remember which one's which, but one of them is ozone friendly and one isn't. Now, if it's not ozone friendly, it'll still work, but over time it's going to break down the acrylic and it might yellow or it might crack. Like something's going to happen to break it down over time. Now, if it's a cheap skimmer and you plan on upgrading one day, maybe you don't care, maybe it's not a big deal. But that's the reason of using an ozone rated one is it's going to hold up to it and it's not going to break down. One-armed reefer. How often do you replace the pipe on the Versa for your auto water change? Thinking about swapping over due to the noise of the Apex dose. Okay, yeah, so Apex dose is fantastic for dosing. It's very loud for an auto water change. Now, how often do I change the tubing? I change not very often, actually. My regular dosing, my calc dosing seems pretty dang good. That lasts a long time. Auto water changing to last a long time. What I find breaks it down or makes it thicker more, my calcium reactor one, which is running tank water to the calcium reactor in a loop 24/7. So that what I'd say I replace every 3 or 4 months. The auto water change ones, I go longer because I'm not running as much. Like if I look at my calcium reactor, let me see how much I'm dosing a day through it. All my trace element dosings, I think I'm still in the original dosing tubes from like years ago. So it depends what you're running through it. So it depends. Calcium reactor replaced every 3 or 4 months. The rest last a lot longer. So my calcium reactor, I'm dosing 66 liters a day through mine right now, like 24/7. So it gets a lot more wear, and then I think it's just the salt water breaks down a bit more often. Helen, relatively newbie, can you clarify when to use carbon? I've always been a big bag at the bottom of my filter stock, but when should I be using it all the time? Okay, so carbon absorbs things. So if you look down the long end of your tank, and your tank looks like with the lights off, if it looks yellow, then there's organics built up in your water. Carbon can remove that. The other big thing carbon will do is if you have coral warfare in your tank, it'll help absorb those toxins. Or if your tank is starting to smell a bit funky, like if it smells like oceany in your house, then carbon will suck out that and remove those smells. So if your tank is smelling funky, or if your water's looking yellow, those are the main times you're like, oh, I should probably replace the carbon. Now we were talking about ozone earlier, and ozone will do a similar thing and deal with those as well via breaking it down or oxidizing it. So ozone or carbon do similar things, slightly different methods of achieving it, but they give you a similar outcome. It does trace as well, all for Reef. Huh, good to know. Tropic Marine claims all for Reef does trace as well. Sweet if it does. I'll totally try it if I do a nano tank in the future, because I think it's a sweet one pump and done. What do you think of Fiji Cube hang on the back refugium? Let me Google that quickly. So, no, that's actually a decent size. Okay, that probably has potential. Most all-in-ones, I argue that the refugium is too small to make any big difference in Formachato growth. Now, I have seen some funky new ones that are more of like an algae scrubber in the back, which I think is super cool because those have lower output for its size. Now, the Fiji Cube one actually looks fairly big, so I think that actually has potential. Now, I'm normally not a fan of hang on the back stuff, but this looks like it'd hide behind the tank and not be super in your face, so there might actually be potential there. If you have something like a mandarin or something that's a pod eater, then I definitely think there's good value in having something like that because it's going to give a place for the pods to thrive and grow in the back. So I'm looking at it now, it's like $266. So I mean, it's not the cheapest box in the world. It's a lot of salt doing weekly water changes. You can take care of it that way. I mean, but it looks like it's a decent size, and if you can grow a bunch of chaeto in the back, then that can definitely help. So those are my thoughts on it. Blind thoughts. Lathario Bowie, best place to buy soft corals. That really depends where you live, man. Everywhere is going to be different. I would just look if you have a local reef club or local Facebook groups to see if anyone's up for trading or selling on there. Yeah, it really depends where you live. That's a tricky one. So one thing that kept me away from Monty Cap and Setosa is their undefined growth pattern. Is there a way to encourage them to grow away like a Monty Cap to cap? So caps, a Monty Cap in highlight is going to grow and spiral upwards. A Monty Cap in low light is going to play outwards like a big shelf. So if you have super high light, you'll more spiral. Super low light, it's going to plate outwards. That's about the extent of you can tweak Monty Cap growth in my experience. Rad Reefer, do you see any problems dosing calc into a filter roller? If the calc is already dissolved in the liquid form, then no, I do not. If you're dosing like a powder or slurry, then it might clog up the roller over time. Samir, hello from India. Welcome from Canada. Your video is a good learning window for the hobby. Appreciated. I appreciate hearing that the videos help, so I'm happy to hear it's helping. Thank you. Alec, I just set up a Hydros X4, currently using an Inkbird heater controller. Would you leave the Inkbird heater or swap it to the Hydros? I would leave it. I would plug the Inkbird into the Hydros, let the Inkbird do all the main lifting on and off, take the abuse of the relays on and off, and set the Hydros like a degree higher. So for any reason the Inkbird ever failed, then the Hydros would shut off power to the Inkbird and therefore the heater. That's how I'd set that up. Patrick, would you recommend an algae scrubber in a 30-gallon tank? That is a questionable one. If you have a sump, yes, I would. If you have an all-in-one, I probably wouldn't bother. Unless it had like a built-in one, then there's potential there. But kind of in like the 20 to 30 gallon and under range, I feel like it's so easy to just do like a 5-gallon bucket water change. And that will keep your tank and your nutrient levels like pretty dang good. But if you have a sump and you have the space to run it, then then you could totally could. But if it's all in one, then you don't have that space. Do you have any experience with Asmarine Plank auto feeder? Thanks for answering. I do not. I have a Neptune auto feeder, which I haven't used in a while, but I have not used the Vast one. Arthur Reef, 5 XR15s over 200 gallons. I hate the fact that I probably have to buy 5 more. You should not. 5 should be plenty for 200 gallons. I had 5 over top of my 200 gallons for a long time. It's great coverage. Now, that being said, what generation is it? Like, Gen 5 or 6s have very wide spread, and that should be tons and tons and tons. Glenn, plus on that one, that's how my Inkbird's set up. Yeah, +1. Okay, yeah, so Inkbird should be your first line of defense. It does the day-to-day on and off, and then use your aquarium controller as a backup. And the main reason for that is if you're constantly cycling your Apex or Hydros or GHL, whatever control on and off, eventually you'll burn out the relay. They only have, so many cycles of thousands and thousands of cycles. That way, if the Inkbird's doing it, you're saving the longevity of your controller's outlet. So let the Inkbird take all the abuse. Samir, one question regarding an auto water change. Does auto water change play a role in unstable parameters? For example, in my case, I do 6 liters per day, 650 liter tank. If anything, auto water change should add to stability of your tank. So no, I personally feel it adds to it. It's such a small percentage that your tank shouldn't notice a difference. But those little chunks add up to give you, either replace or remove, or if there's any contaminants in there, it's going to help, dilute it over time. So personally, I feel like it adds to the stability. All right, David C. Best light for a water box 20 cube. If you want more of a budget light, I would probably look at either a small blade or an AI. Like a prime is all I ever used on my 20. If you want best light, it'd be super overkill, but I have one buddy that put an XR15 on his 20 cube and it looks freaking crazy. It's so much light, which would be amazing, but not the cheapest option. So those are your thoughts. My thoughts on it. Law Dog, do you dose Phyto to your tank and what are the benefits? I do randomly. I do have Reef Nutrition Phyto in the fridge and I do randomly dose it to my tank. When I was culturing it, I dose it almost daily. Now that I'm not culturing it, I dose it a little less frequently. Chris, what's going on? Good to see you, buddy. So with phytoplankton, so if you have filter feeders, again, they're going to appreciate it. If you have small clams, like clams less than 3 inches, primarily filter feed. As they get bigger, they're photosynthetic and they require less, but small clams definitely appreciate it. Now, the other consideration is if you want to grow your pod population in your tank. Phytoplankton is the base food source of the ocean. and it's going to feed the pods, all the small crustaceans, and other creatures feed on them and up the food chain. So by feeding pods or feeding phyto to your tank, you're feeding the pods, you're basically gut loading with those nutrients, and then whatever eats them is going to, again, acquire those nutrients. So I do think there's lots of benefits to feeding phyto to your system. Okay, Samuel, should I continue with 3 liters per day or reduce to 3 liters per day? Tank 7 to 8 ounce mold. As long as you don't feel like you're burning through too much salt, I mean 6 liters a day, I think just keep it going. Good afternoon. Such a famous Reef exclusive. How's it going, Riff? Chris, how you doing, buddy? So, you guys will be in for a treat sometime in the next few weeks when I get around to editing the video with Chris that I shot at ACI Aquaculture. Behind the scenes of the elusive Chris Mad Scientist awesome coral farm. So I definitely have to edit that one sometime in the next week or two, but it was a good one. So it was definitely a pleasure to go check it out in person after talking to Chris for all these years. So I was pretty stoked. Have been dosing all for Reef for 4 months, 5 months, my 20-gallon, did nice P-test. All is well except chromium, iron, iodine, lithium, magnesium, nickel, and zinc were low. Okay, yeah, so if you only have a 20-gallon, like, do, a 10-gallon water change, for 2 weeks in a row, and you'll basically correct your trace elements. So in a small system, I honestly feel you're better off just doing a big water change just to reset things once in a while. In a big tank, then yes, definitely dose your test your trace a little more often. Nice Bastia of the day. I'm assuming that was Chris with his kids. I remember seeing that photo. It was pretty solid. Alright guys, what else you guys got for questions? But yeah, so hopefully lots of good reefing videos, kind of like little coral eye candy tours coming over the next few weeks. One magical thing of Orlando is there's so many amazing reef places to visit and check out down there. So I shot lots and lots of video. I think I have 130 gigs of video to go through. Lots. What I'm Reefer. Hi Chris, after your live stream, started mixing trace elements with RO. Great idea, thanks again. 100% agree. That is brilliant, and I definitely need to get on that one soon. Still in Kelk after your advice last year. Tank's looking amazing. Kelk is magical. It's definitely worth it for the pH boost, and if you are running a calcium reactor, just having that extra bit of pH boost to balance out the negative aspect of the calcium reactor works very, very well. And Chris, since you're on, we were talking about the critical mass of pH. So it's been slowly upping itself the last few days. So I think I'm out competing my carbonic acid. It's at 8.41 right now, so it's a good place to be. See you at Reefapalooza, New York, New Jersey. I don't know if that one's going to happen. That one's a bit questionable. It's a little bit close, so if I do another show, it'll probably be more later summer, fall time, but we'll see. What's your go-to online store? For what? What are you trying to get, Patrick? This is a big question. Now keep in mind, I'm also in Canada, so where you live makes a big difference. Tracy, I missed that. Smacked Up would be awesome to go. Yeah, I don't know. I'll give you a heads up next time I go. Living Reef is a somewhat hidden gem that people overlook. Living Reef is a very nice store, actually. Unfortunately, I did not get to go to the farm because no one was there, but I did shoot some video of their display tank and stuff in the store. I went with a bunch of the British guys from the UK, so it was kind of a fun little outing. Josh, I switched from Brightwell Part A to powder version and cannot get the stuff to fully dissolve in RODI. Is there any tricks? Solution is cloudy, thick layer at the bottom. If the water is warmer, it generally helps it dissolve a little faster. Now, a big thing, can't see mine, but a magnetic stirrer, super cheap on Amazon, like 20-30 bucks, and let the stirrer mix it for you. And so mix up your water and just add a bit of powder. What I'll do, especially if I'm not in a big rush, I'll let it stir and I'll just dump some in, 5 minutes later, walk by, dump a bit more in, and just keep doing that until it fully does it. And then letting the stir do all the work for you will really help it dissolve a lot quicker. Greetings from Russia. Yeah, welcome. Greetings from Canada. You have a good channel. Thank you, Riff. Appreciate it. Yeah, so with mixing any additives, a magnetic stirrer is your best friend, and they're not that expensive. 100% recommend it. Patrick from Manitoba, what's your go-to coral store? I don't have a specific one. I go all over the place. I would say within Canada for corals, Frag Box and Frag Garage are pretty solid options. Yeah, take a look at those two. Manitoba, you're kind of in the middle. I would say Frag Box March is pretty close to you. That might be a consideration. Saltwater and Lime, I was never able to get Brightwell powder dissolve. Went back to using liquid only. So buying powder form is definitely cheaper because you're not paying to ship the water weight. But yes, 100% magnetic stir is hands down your friend. ACI, one arm reefer really is amazing. Kelk and MNT dosing. What's MNT? Something a trace? Oh man, his magnetic stir did add the powder too fast. Yeah, I found when I was using the Brightwell in the past, I found it took a lot longer if I dumped it all in the powder all at once. Or if I added it slowly, it seemed to dissolve a lot easier over time. So, consideration, try just adding it slower next time. Percy Adams, hello everyone, welcome. I will start dosing kelp. How much per day gallon will it raise KH? And how do I dose only at night or continuously? Minor trace. I used to dose it 24/7, and now I started dosing at night only. So I'm dosing my alkalinity solution and my calc, and ironically my skimmer turning on only at nighttime. So I've been doing this to naturally your pH rises in the day with photosynthesis, your lights are on. So I was looking at, again, you can do 24/7, but just explaining what I'm currently doing. So I looked at my light charts and I looked at when my pH started to tank on the thing. And basically when my pH was starting to dip and to roughly when it was starting to go back up, I kind of took the midpoints, and those hours between the midpoints of the drops of the valley is when I am dosing my kelk, my skimmer is on, and dosing my alkalinity solution all during the dip. So that's what I've been doing now. So I've been basically trying to cut off the bottom of my pH dips to overall keep it higher. And so far it's been working pretty well. How is the home air exchanger you installed? Air exchanger is working well. It is, yeah, I mean, now it's a nice temperature, so I was having the windows open more, but definitely makes a big difference in the windows. But yeah, so the main thing I've been doing is trying to flatten out my pH dips. So I let it naturally go higher in the daytime, and then I try and cancel out the dips. And that's been slowly kind of like upping my pH. I wish more people listen. pH is most important. Yeah, next I got to deal with pH on the tank beside me. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with my big tank, though. My pH is magically higher than it's been in a long, long time. Chris, you should be proud, buddy. 8.41 right now. It's pretty solid. That's what I strive for, a tank with high pH. It's been amazing. Perfect background. Thank you. You're most welcome, Percy. Yeah, I'll have to figure out what to dose to this tank next to up things a little bit more. Perfect background. Yeah, Utter Chaos is a good one. I need to film some more macro shots for some more backgrounds, but yeah, Utter Chaos is probably, it's up there on my fave Zoas. It's just so bright and such cool contrast with the bright orange and dark. It's a good one. I'll be at Reef Palooza in New York. Who's coming? Sadly, I don't think I will. Josh, 8.412. Nice. Awesome. Ironically, yesterday, my max was 8.36, and it was there for a long time. It was like, it just cut off at 8.36. I'm like, is my probe maxed out? Like, how is it not going any higher? It's so weird to see such a flat line. But then today, you know, that line raised up a little bit more. So I'm a little bit curious to see what happens tomorrow and just see if it keeps, like, stepping up. We'll see where it ends up. Ollie H, do you ever bubble scrub? Could it have a pH benefit too? I used to bubble scrub. I haven't not done it in quite a while. Now, if you're bubble scrubbing and you are injecting air with less CO2 than is in your tank, then yes, you will definitely see a benefit to it. And that's one of your bigger considerations. If your room is full of CO2 and you're injecting CO2 in your tank, I mean, you may see no benefit, you may see a negative benefit. If you're sucking outside air and forcing it in, and it's adding lower CO2 air to your tank, it's going to help remove some of that CO2 and you'll see benefit. So it depends on the CO2 levels of the room and how much of that air you're pushing through your tank. One-armed reefer, 1.20 here. My pH is at 8.28. Yeah, you're in a happy range. Target pH value of 8.29 and no higher. Photosynthesis take up, not the calc dosing. pH value of 8.29. That's a pretty high. Most people shoot for that as a high. So if your low is 8.29, you're in a pretty solid place. What's up, Reefs? The sea forever. Any experience using an AF build? Claims it helps buffer pH, but haven't heard much about it. I'm assuming you're referring to Aquaforest. Aquaforest Pro line. I don't know about the regular, but the Pro line in the white containers does boost your pH more than the regular one. It is more concentrated, and it does have some additives that help boost your pH more than normal. So I did use it. It is some solid stuff for dosing. Okay, Samir, what would be the ideal time frame to get UV online on a relatively new tank? Also, are you against or for UV? I think there's definitely benefits to UV. I wouldn't necessarily worry about it during your tank cycle. But if you're plumbing a tank, I mean, if you already have it, plumb it in. But I probably wouldn't turn it on until my tank was like cycled and running. But there's definitely benefits to it. It's going to help clarify your water. If there's any pathogens in your tank, it's going to help sterilize it. I mean, if you saw my live stream with Chris last week, he theorized that there's benefits to the corals of, the UV affecting the bacteria, the bacteria being eaten by the corals and gaining that kind of UV goodness. So it's kind of a consideration. So I would say there's benefits. I don't see any negatives to running it other than maybe it heats up your water a bit. Like if your tank is running super hot, the UV is going to add some heat. So that's the only really negative. Otherwise, it's good stuff. Tracy, my low is 8.43. Dang, Tracy. You got some solid pH there, buddy. You only add all for Reef and your pH is 8.43. I would recalibrate that probe, but dang, that's some pretty solid pH. I am a little bit curious what your high is, because that's pretty high. But it sounds like you're in a good place. With a big refugium. In serious, very plausible. Thanks for the clarification on UV. You're most welcome. Damn, super late. What's up, everyone? Dev, what's going on? Tyler, welcome. Yeah, I think UV is beneficial for sure. I don't think there's any negatives other than the heat. Overall, I'd say if you want to add it, go for it. The only considerations are, you got to maintain it, every 6 months or a year. Make sure you clean your quartz crystal sleeve. So if it gets mucked up, then you might not be getting all the UV to the water that's flowing through it. But otherwise, you should be good. Keith, I have a Digi that suddenly started getting covered in brown algae. Part of it died. Ever seen that? Everything else is fine. Can't really see the dip. We're on the rocks. Sorry, just wanted. I speculate your brown algae, if it's like gobby and like gooey, it might be the same crap that I've been dealing with. Or it's more of a bacteria, but it might be chrysophytes, which is a very broad category of algae. I've been slowly trying to compete it. Supposedly silicates might work. I mean, dosing peroxide might work. I've just manually been sucking it out every few weeks. And it's, I'm going to say 95% gone, but it's an annoying one. It's a bit of a bugger to deal with that one. Percy, how do you manage zoas or softies growing on hard corals? I usually don't even worry. I kind of, unless they're like invasively growing like a weed, I generally just let them do their thing. But if they're super invasive, then I tend to want to remove them. Arthur, can you mount 2 extra 15s on one radium arm with a longer rail? Possibly. Can't say I've ever tried that one though. The older style radium Meridian mount went at the end. The newer style clips over top. So theoretically, I think you probably could mount two to it. The only consideration, I wouldn't do it on like 5 mil super thin glass because that's a lot of weight cantilever on it. But if you have thicker glass, then you're probably fine to try that. Tracy L says the CO2 scrubber, big boy for my scaps. Okay, CO2 scrubbers make a surprisingly big difference. I do have one on my skimmer as well. And again, my skimmer's only running now at nighttime when my pH dips. But yeah, the CO2 scrubber, when I put in new media, I definitely see like a solid boost in pH. The only downfall is that's another consumable you gotta buy, but it definitely does help your pH. What's going on, Ellen? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, pH is definitely a rabbit hole. If you're somewhere you can open the windows, start there. That's the cheap and easy solution. All the rest of them cost money, but it's a good place to start. Or outside air to your skimmer. That's also another good one. Alright guys, what else you guys got for questions? Did you see any cool new gadgets over the weekend? That SeaTac glue is kind of cool, the thicker stuff. The Reef Factory, their doser, their accurate element doser was kind of cool. It's like a little box with super high precision pumps, and you load whatever cartridges of you want to test. So each one can be the test a specific value. So that was kind of funky. So you can get specific things you want to test. Geo's Reef had a super duper silent calcium reactor, which I appreciate because I love a silent reef tank. Basically prevented any possible form of cavitation through the pump, which made it ultra quiet. Oh, that was pretty cool too. What else is cool? I don't know, those are a couple things that stand out in my mind. There might be other cool stuff, but what would you recommend as the best test kit? That is a very broad question. What do you want to test? That's the magical question, because I like different test kits for different things. I Dip Marine. There was another tester that was actually a cool one. It was like a universal colorimeter. Francisco's booth had it, and you could test. They had their own reagents which you could test, or you could use like Hannah's reagents or other reagents, or you can even bring your own reagent and you could program it to test basically any of the reagents. So it was like a universal colorimeter. That was pretty cool. Saltwater Line loved the reactors at Geo's Reef. Yeah, his Chaeto reactor thing was pretty cool too. That and his like super silent calcium reactor. Anything super silent has a special place in my heart because I love a silent tank. It makes me happy. Yeah, so best test kit depends what it is. So we'll start there. ACI Coraline is great, but a curse as well. You're not wrong. Everyone loves it on the rock. It's a pain in the butt when it's on your glass and your pumps and everywhere else. So it's definitely a bit of a trade-off. What I did when I first started initially to add Coraline to the tank, I took a snail shell from a buddy's tank that was just covered in Coraline, and I just rubbed it all over my rocks. Like, it was an empty shell, the snail was long gone, super purple shell, and I just rubbed it all over my rocks, and that little bit was enough to seed it and get stuff growing over time. And that was on, like, you know, fresh white bright Marco rock way back when. The Lucent Fish. Speaking of silent return pumps, any thoughts for a super quiet one for an 80-gallon tank? My initial thoughts is I'd probably use a Vector S2. Supposedly the Varios pumps are quiet as well, so that's another option, but likely be one of the two that I would go for. It sucks your elk more than other corals. Which one's that one, Chris? Oh, Coraline. Yeah, Coraline definitely does the elk suck. So you're dosing to feed your algae, which sounds funny, but that's true with Coraline. Dealing with the lack of vibration noise I cannot get rid of. Silicone mat, dynamite layers, heads up. Okay, so vibration generally comes from an AC pump. So starting DC is already going to be substantially quiet. If you want super budget, I mean, Jabo pumps DC are pretty solid for the price. That being said, when I had one, my Versa was quieter than the Jabo. So then I got rid of the Jabo and I went to the Versa. So Versa's like my top pick, That being said, I've also heard good things with the Varios, and Josh just said his is silent. So those are the two I'd personally look at. To get your pH high, what would be the max you would want to aim for and why? I think 8.3 is a solid goal. 8.4 as a high is probably not bad. I believe Ryan Chummingham, I think he's coming out next week actually. I believe his was 8.4 to 8.5 range, and like he saw no negative effects from it. I'm sure Chris has had his pretty high too without any negative effects. So it is a good question, you know, what is too high for pH? And that one I don't know, because I haven't been there yet. But I would say 8.4 and under, you're still pretty safe. I got a Size 3.0 silent drive, but it's AC. Curious, is it silent, the lucent fish? Anton. I'm tired of large polyp zoanthids being called palitho in the hobby. They are Z Vietnamese Cushioro / gigantus, not pallies. Yeah, the good old terminology game. The only ones I have are like the big cinnamon ones or the like greeny ones. I'm not as hardcore as a stickler on the names as some, but tank is dead silent. See? Good place to be. Closed loop system using 3 octopus various pumps. They're the best. Okay, there you go. It's been confirmed in the chat. How fast does your reef grow? Again, super broad question. Depends on the coral. Some corals grow super fast. Some grow slower. So you can't really say the reef in general, because every single coral is definitely going to be different. Chris, AC Aquaculture, my failsafe is 8.45. All dosing pumps shut down. So if 8.45 his dosing stops, or that's his max. Dosing stops at 8.29. So stops at 8.29, naturally can rise up to 8.45. But yeah. Did you see the power spectrometer? I think CoralView has it. There was one by ITC, I believe it is. I think it's ITC. I was actually really curious to know how that works. I saw a couple of people using it. It might have been CoralView one, and then the guys with the Art Reef Rocks also had one on their lights. And it was the spectrometer plugged into a phone and showing the spectrum graphs. Now I am really curious to see how well that works, because it would be fun to have a spectrometer if it actually works well. But I don't know. I'm waiting to see if there's some other stuff on it. I know what was the prior iteration of that one? Who else had the USB spectrometers? Different company. They look the same though. It was Senai. That's who had it. So Senai, I don't know. The ITC one looked very similar, and to the Senai. And I don't know if they bought Senai or it changed, or I don't know. But if it works well, I kind of want one. Yeah, so hopefully, I don't know, I gotta dig into that one more. Josh, my CO2 scrubber set to shut down, the skimmer 8.44. If it hits there most afternoons. Solid. What's going on, Phil? Phil, you are late. Dun. Had to pick up 20-pound box of corals I had shipped. Bird's nest punctured and leaked. Oh, that sucks. UPS didn't send it. Oh, that sucks, man. Sorry to hear that. Everyone will be testing their lights. Heck yeah. I want a spectrometer. I think that'd be fun. Hope that one's waterproof. Par-wise. Thanks, One Arm Reefer. Is it Par-wise? Google imaging this. I don't see it yet. Par-wise spectrometer. I still feel like it's ITC, but one of the two. Either way, if it does work well, we'll have to eventually hunt one down. Yeah, that sucks, Phil. At least the corals are okay. Hey, if they survived that, that's pretty solid. ACI, Josh, Apex dose is what we use to dose 700 mils every 8 to 10 minutes depending on the system. What are the long-term effects of high pH 8.6 in a closed system? I don't know. If anyone has had their pH that high long-term, I am super curious. I feel like if someone did, it would either be Chris or Ryan from Chummingham's Reef. So, Chris, if you had it higher than 8.6, let me know. And if not, I'm going to ask Ryan next week. I generally suffer from chronically low pH, so this is like a new happy found realm that I'm in the higher pH zone. So we will see. For the longest time, I've been thinking of having a quarantine tank. The only thing holding me back is temp. Is a chiller absolute necessity? Average temp can be 28 to 32 Celsius. Whew, that's toasty, man. Yeah, I would want something for that. 28 C to F is what? That's 82. 82 to 32. So that's 82 to 89. In my opinion, that's too hot. You can put a fan on the tank and use evaporative cooling if you don't want to do a chiller. But I would question that being too hot personally. Okay, so Chris, I've never had pH higher than 8.5. That is too high in my opinion. I think, anything above, 8.1, 8.3 is a solid range, or even 8.4 is the high. But yeah, so 8.5 is too high in his opinion. I'm going to ask Ryan next week, so I'm curious to see what his highest is, but I would probably agree with you. I think 8.3, 8.4 is a top, is a pretty solid place to be. And yeah, any higher, I don't know if there's any benefit. I don't know if there's a negative, but yeah, so ITC par-wise, 379 Canadian. I don't know. I'll look later. I'm curious to know how well that works. If any of you guys have used the par-wise, let me know. Is it accurate for spectrometer? Good question. 8.29 is our target. Photosynthesis takes it up naturally. We target natural seawater. Solid. Chiller is decent number of fans. Yeah, so if you don't have a chiller, forcing evaporation definitely helps cool it down. And I mean, it's probably way cheaper to run fans than a chiller. All right, guys, I think we're now in 40 minutes. I think we'll call it pretty quick. If you got any last minute burning questions, let me know. If anyone's used the Parwise, I'm curious to know, because I think it'd be fun to have a spectrometer, assuming it actually works well. Fill 8.6 ounces on the frag tank. Coral's okay, but the 2-part participated out and caused a mess to my sump everywhere. White cross everywhere. Oh, good to know. So too high pH can cause extra precipitation. So you're basically just wasting your dosing solutions. That's a good reason. Appreciate that one, Phil. Even with fans, my tanks got too hot when ambient temperature in the room was above 30. Yeah, it is hard to beat. Like, ideally you have air conditioning in your house, but yeah, 30 C is definitely getting toasty. Anything above 25 in a house, I mean, air conditioning will definitely be your friend. It was great seeing you, Amanda. Agreed. I appreciated hanging out in person the other day. That was fun. If you were starting a new reef tank from scratch, say 100 gallons, outside of sand, rock, lights, power heads, what would your next investment be? An auto top off? Probably something to dose my tank. Yes, rock, sand, lights, power heads. Yeah, you want either get an auto top off or get a calc reactor and use that instead of your auto top off. That's what I would probably look at next. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's live stream. If you did, hit that like button. Keep the Google gods happy. At my local coral vendor's house the past weekend, 8.48, and he says his hovers around there too. Yeah, so precipitation is an interesting one, and yeah, so Phil's, I'm gonna see if that's consistent if I find anyone else that has super high pH, but that's definitely a good one to know. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hit that thumbs up button. Arthur's Reef Exotico, Tracy, Piort, Anthony, Dedicated Reefer. Thank you guys for the super chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as always. Happy Wednesday, and I'll catch you guys next week's live stream.